The global startup world has had an elephant in the room for a very long time. The unfortunate problem was nobody really wanted to address that elephant in the room, and with time that elephant got larger and larger and larger. And with the whole COVID-19 pandemic and the crisis around it, now that elephant is the room, and everybody who's a startup entrepreneur or a VC fund is now become an element, a very small element of that room. So the startup industry and that whole sector is in a massive crisis. And this crisis has been created over a number of years. It's not new. Some people thought of it was something that was a passing phase. Others thought, no, this is just something that can be managed. And now, because of COVID-19, it's become very clear that this is not a problem that can be managed. So let's go from the beginning. Now, if you look at where the startup industry was in the last 10 years, it wasn't in a very good place, to be very honest. So the number of failures in the startup world at best case was 70% and at worst case was 90%. So even if it was 70% failure rate, that was still high. And that was billions and billions of dollars that were put into those startup ideas that never made it to anything and anywhere. The people who were encouraging the startup entrepreneurs were the same VCs, the same incubators and the same accelerators who today are again giving them the new mantra to say that, hey, listen, now the only thing you need to do is shift gears. And that shifting of gears, what they're trying to say is that you're no longer supposed to focus on scale, growth and all that amazing mantra of marketing and customer acquisition, but now you need to focus on developing a positive cash flow. So you need to make money out of the startup business ideas that you have. Now that shift of gear is not really a shift of gear, is it? What it is a shift of an entire car with a completely new road in a different country. That's how big a shift it is. I don't think it's easy for any startup, any entrepreneur to do that shift very easily. And that is why I think that the problem that will happen now in the startup world is a little bigger and larger than what most people are willing to admit. There is and there are possibilities of going around this as long as startup entrepreneurs and the industry itself is willing to adapt to that change. And there will be a shift, and that shift will have a lot of collateral damage, a lot of it. And I think that collateral damage is that a majority of these startups and these entrepreneurs will fade because they were never geared, they were never prepared for something like this. And that is the elephant in the room. And until and unless we begin to address that elephant in the room, which is that you need to launch ideas that have the ability to succeed. And when I say succeed, I am not talking about exits. I'm not talking about acquisitions. I'm talking about making your business profitable, making your business self-reliant, making your business self-sustainable. And that is what has been missing. And that misleading and that missing has been encouraged by large VC funds, has been encouraged by accelerators, incubators, and that needs to change. So my message today to startup entrepreneurs and founders around the world is, whatever you've lost or are going to lose is not worth spending your time on. What is worth spending your time on is choose your VCs correctly, choose your incubators correctly, choose your mentors correctly, because these are the people who have led you to believe for the last 2 decades that all of this whole wow factor is what was required to be successful in the startup world. One pandemic has shown us that's not the case. And besides, why would you want to launch a business that's only reliant and dependent on investor money? That needs to change. These investors, people like me, need to see returns. We've just been given good stories and amazing stories of these famous exits and acquisitions, which rarely happen. And that needs to change. So you, as a startup founder, as a startup entrepreneur, if you need to change, start looking at the fundamentals of business. And the fundamentals of business is based around economy, is based around business fundamentals. And until and unless you're able to drive more revenue and more bottom line into your numbers, there's nothing that's going to help you. So it's time to change. Yes, it is, but it's time to physically and fundamentally change the way you think about the startup industry. Thankfully, I believe this pandemic will change that industry for the better and not for the worse. And thankfully, we'll get rid of all of this wow factor, magic show VCs and incubators out of the industry. You startup founders need to drive them out, because you need to believe now that the only way you can succeed and make it in this industry is by being real and not by being projective and fake. So I hope this video helps you understand where this industry is at the moment, which is in crisis, but there is a way out. And that way out is what you need to look at and focus on. I wish all the entrepreneurs all the best and wish you a lot of success in whatever ventures you are doing.